r/ask Reddit. What's a fact you know that almost everyone is wrong about? The McDonald's hot coffee case was not a frivolous lawsuit. That woman suffered third-degree burns after being served coffee that was so hot even the McDonald's QA admitted it would have taken 30+ minutes to cool to a drinkable temperature. It wasn't even the first incident involving Thar coffee. At the time of the injury, 700 other complaints had been filed against McDonald's for Thar coffee, some of which had actually been settled out of court. Edit. Okay, so this has blown up and there are shitheads in the comments spouting misinformation about the case. So I'm going to clarify some things. Water doesn't need to be boiling to cause third-degree burns. She was neither driving the car, nor was the car moving. She did put the cup between her legs to put sugar in it. For this, the court found her 20% liable for the incident. She still received punitive damages because even if she had poured that ducking cup on her head, McDonald's was still grossly negligent in serving a product that they had 7 ducking hundred cases of injuries from. That woman's labia was fused to her body as a result of spilling that coffee on her lap. She didn't even want to sue but was strongly encouraged to and finally did. Poor woman. God, that made my already internal sex organs to somehow retract further into my body. Ow ow ow. People think that the health department shuts restaurants down for good. Honestly, we don't have the authority to do that. We can close the doors of a restaurant for a certain amount of time in order to fix imminent health hazards, but it would be a gross misuse of our power to close them down permanently. What's the worst situation you've ever encountered in a restaurant? A bunch of rats doing the cooking. The tower isn't named Isengard, it is named Orthanc. Isengard is where the tower stands. Similarly, the fortress isn't Helm's Deep. That is the location of the fortress. The name of the fortress is the Hornburg. Isn't the Hornburg only the keep of the fortress, so to speak? There's the Deeping Wall, and then the Hornburg. When Juliet says, "Wherefore art thou Romeo?" she is not asking where he is. Wherefore means why, not where. She is asking why he is Romeo Montague, why he couldn't be anyone else from any other family, so they could be together. Norwegian students get this. Our word for why is hvorfor, which literally translates into wherefore. We can sound archaic on an everyday basis at times, but at least we understand Shakespeare. Everybody who reads the footnote to the play understands this. Antarctica is the largest desert on Earth. I like this one. Desert is not defined by sand or heat, it's defined by precipitation. I hate sand. I grew up in Kansas City, MO. I haven't lived there in about 12 years and almost everyone I encounter who hears where I grew up says, "Wait, isn't Kansas City in Kansas?" No. Well, yes, but also no. I lived in Kansas City for 2 years. I was talking to someone at home and mentioned that I lived in Kansas City. Oh, I used to live near there. Missouri or Kansas? Missouri. Oh. So, Independence? No. Kansas City, Missouri. Lee's Summit? No. Kansas City, on the Missouri side. Olathe? Overland Park? Those are both in Kansas. I live in Kansas City, on the Missouri side, actually in the city, across Brush Creek from the plaza. I don't understand. Gahhhh. Look, close your eyes. Think of Kansas City. I promise that whatever you are thinking about is in Missouri. And this lady couldn't fathom that a person would actually live in the city part of Kansas City. I live in Olathe and that is hilarious. How could she know the main suburbs but not that people actually live in the city part? Does she think that all people who work in the city commute from the suburbs? How marginal income tax rates work. You can't take home less money at the end of the day because you got a raise. The number of people who make that basic error is astounding. Changes in pay rate over the course of the year can cause temporary reductions in base pay, which will be corrected during the tax filing processes. This is most evident when getting overtime. You will still get paid more, but your nominal tax rate will assume that you are permanently making that rate for that specific period. My wife worked for an accountant for over a decade. The way she explained it to my simple ass was, using small numbers for ease of comprehension. If you currently make $9 a year and get taxed 1%, and making $10 a year puts you in a higher tax bracket of 2%, you're only getting taxed 2% on that extra dollar you would make, not the original $9 you made. Those original $9 were still taxed at 1%. Maybe there's some incorrect terms in there, and maybe I'm remembering this incorrectly. This is how I remember her explanation. If something about that is wrong, it's likely my memory, not my patient assistant wife who helps me learn stuff. Japan is not the weird place that people think it is from only seeing popular culture videos and Big in Japan articles. It's in fact a very conservative and muted place that of course has a few people that don't fit in the mold. But in reality those few people are a super small minority, and their genitals aren't all pixelated. Can confirm. Dated 2 Japanese women. Only one had pixelated genitals. Anime characters don't count. Shaving won't make hair grow back faster or thicker. I had to explain this to a 30-year-old man the other day, who thought that if a woman were to shave her upper lip hair she'd end up with a thick mustache like a man's. Even after explaining it to him thoroughly, I'm not sure he was convinced. How? Even. WTF. Solving a Rubik's Cube doesn't require a high IQ. You memorize simple algorithms moves, and with some practice it can be learned fairly quickly. Similar to ripping a phone book in half, it doesn't require enormous strength, just the right technique. Yeah, you just go page by page. Decimate literally means to reduce by a tenth, but it has come to mean utterly destroy. So in 10v10 game of Roblox I can get 1 kill and still decimate the other team? Technically, you are correct, and that's the best kind of correct. The red liquid that comes out of a rare steak is not blood. It's people. Steakland green. I did not piss my pants that one time. It was spilled juice. Yeah right. Kid who pissed his pants in 8th grade. If peeing your pants is cool, consider me Miles Davis. The Atlantic end of the Panama Canal is further west than the Pacific end. Similarly, you drive south when crossing the bridge from Detroit to Canada. Yeah, South Detroit is Windsor, Ontario. Cinco de Mayo isn't Mexico's Independence Day. It also doesn't mean sink of mayonnaise. Never making that mistake again. Totally, it's Cinco de Cuatro that matters. As a lefty I hear this one a lot. Left-handed people do not actually live on average 7 years shorter than right-handed people. When the study was completed it forgot to consider that. Back in the day, left-handed people were forced to become right-handed in school. So at a certain point all older people would report as right-handed in the study even if they were naturally born left-handed. I don't know what's more annoying, being teased about it or the long and convoluted explanation to debunk it. Here's a source if you want to know more. I am a lefty and have literally never been teased about this. My mom did try to switch me over to writing with my right hand when I was a kid though. She was from an Eastern European country where that was still the standard in the 60s. But my teacher being a lefty in 1st grade put an end to that. Left-handers are just so sinister. Open bracket. It's an etymology joke. I don't mean it. The verb to describe a person being suspended from the neck by rope is hanged, never hung. Hanged is a word which uniquely expresses the human experience of hanging. Father had only gone out to ransom Petty Pimple. He brought them the gold they asked for, but they hung him anyway. Hanged. Me. Your father was not a tapestry. Railroad slave. Bart, is that you? Boy, they said you was hung. Sheriff Bart, and they was right. If a plane flies faster than the speed of sound, one can hear the sonic boom everywhere the plane flies over, and not only there where it goes transonic. I saw quite a few articles in which people complained about pilots going transonic exactly over cities. Pilots call it dragging a sonic boom. It's the most glorious way to suffer hearing loss. Edit. I'm not talking about the pilots suffering hearing loss. I mean us on the ground. Let that big beautiful boom wash my sins away, baby. Tinnitus from being in the danger zone. The Immaculate Conception of Mary does not refer to the virgin birth. The virgin birth is called the doctrine of incarnation. In Catholicism, Immaculate Conception is the idea that Mary herself was born without original sin. God did this because Jesus was going to be great or something, and I guess it wouldn't be fitting for Jesus to be born from a person who had original sin, for some reason. I don't really understand. I'm not Catholic. I just took a minor in religious studies. I'm not Catholic. I just took a minor, you'll fit right in. In Home Alone, It was Kevin's uncle who lived in Paris who was paying for everyone's trip there, not Kevin's dad. That meme that goes around this time of year has it incorrect and it drives me nuts. Link here. https
i.pnim.com/733xb8831b803,145f921
Stupid things, random things. JPG. Still a really expensive house. I'm still wondering what his dad did. That house is in Winnetka, which is part of the North Shore area of Chicago. That area is rich, like one of the richest in the country. Edit. A lot of movies were filmed in that area. Most of John Hughes movies, Risky Business, and Ordinary People come to mind, off the top of my head. People with a bipolar disorder have manic and depressive phases that last over weeks or months. Sudden mood swings are typically a part of the clinical picture. There is atypical mania and there are rapid cyclers. Also, a manic episode only has to last for 1 week. Source: I diagnose this shit and have a DSM-5 sitting on my desk. Wolf packs are not violent dictatorships led by an alpha male. Wolves live in family groups similar to human families, centered around the breeding pair, aka mom and dad. The rest of the pack consists of their pups of various ages, possibly siblings, even grandparents. Wild wolf packs are far less violent than feral dog packs and show a greater level of cooperation. Also, wolves don't stay with their birth pack for their entire lives. Some young wolves may stay longer than others, but most leave to find their own mates and start new packs. The myth of the alpha wolf comes from how wolves behave when in captivity. It's like extrapolating from prison behavior to determine how humans act in households. It's pronounced Jif. I'm sorry, but it's not Jif, it's Jif. Like the G in gigantic. I knew my son had a fever. Everyone called me crazy and told me I was imagining it because they didn't feel anything. Wouldn't let me go get a thermometer because we had important family plans we couldn't be late for. They had control of the car and I fought for it, but they gave no shits. Now I am sitting in an emergency room while docs are trying to keep his oxygen up. I shouldn't be writing this here, but I don't have anyone else to tell. I just want my baby to be okay, and they say he's got a virus and can't do anything but keep his body satisfied with its needs. Fluids, oxygen, etc. They gave a breathing treatment but he didn't respond to it well. He's only 18 months old and so usually full of life, and he's just laying there wheezing into an oxygen mask. Edit 3. Let me give a timeline for those asking questions. I was very stressed and angry and sorry for the confusion of the original comment 12ish yesterday. Car breaks down and I have to leave it in the shop. Husband gives me a ride to my parents' house so I can attend Christmas party at great grandma's with son the next day. 6:30 am. Everyone up to get ready. We usually go early, help cook, basically have a good time before the party starts at noon. I get baby up. He has fever that I can tell and bring him to the family. There are no other symptoms, so I just want a thermometer and some Tylenol at this point. Family doesn't agree he has a fever. His granddad and aunt, and talks me down and tells me I am being a dramatic first time mom. We go to party. 8:30ish we have been there a while and he begins coughing. 9:30ish fever definitely there. Barking cough. Gasping. 10ish I said duck these people. Got in my dad's van and went to hospital. Edit. Sorry, I just needed to vent till go back to normal. Replied to Stuffy, know that the average lemon will contain more sugar than the average strawberry, and I know bananas grow on herbs not trees. Edit 2. Thank you so much for all your kind words. Sitting around and answering replies has really helped me calm down and focus. My son is going to be okay, they say, and will have to ride the virus out. You people really are fantastic and should be told that more often. One more update. Confirmed type B flu. The Dow is not the stock market. When people say the stock market was up 100 points today, they're literally talking nonsense. Also, the Dow is not even a particularly good index representing the stock market. It's weighted by raw price, which is idiotic, and there are many other problems. The Dow Jones index is up 100 points. That would be the proper way of saying it. The Dow Jones is only 30 companies, not the entire market. As you said, the Dow Jones itself is a pretty poor way of rating how well the market is doing. Or worse, some people use it to judge the economy as a whole. The Titanic was a great advance in ship design and safety, and that accident would have sunk most ships, including modern ones. The issues with the Titanic seem so obvious to us in hindsight. How could they be so stupid as to not have enough lifeboats? What kind of monster would prioritize first-class layout over a watertight deck? But nobody saw things that way. They were already thinking ahead of their time. The Titanic and her sister ships were part of a sea change in attitudes towards risk and safety, which contrasts sharply with the Victorian attitude that life was cheap. People were basically disposable, and we're all going to die, so it might as well be today. People regularly died at sea. It was no big deal. The Titanic design was proof against pretty well any foreseeable accident. No wonder they didn't see the need for lifeboats. The problem is, that accident was in no way foreseeable, and with the number of compartments breached, was far beyond being a reasonable eventuality to design for. Even now, our modern assumption that ships must have watertight decks and life-saving equipment for everyone, plus a margin, is a result of the Titanic disaster. If that had never happened, those laws would likely never have been enacted. But the Titanic disaster is one of those things which have, as someone said in another thread, elastic causality. If the Titanic disaster had never happened, we would have carried on with those safety standards, and sooner or later, a Titanic disaster would have happened. Canadian geese are actually called Canada geese. They're actually called a-holes. Iceland is way smaller than it appears on most maps. Everything at a northern latitude is way smaller than it appears on most maps, and everything close to the equator is way bigger. Damn you, Mercator projection. The vast majority of nouns are modified by the word fewer, not the word less. Found Stannis. Antisocial is not when someone is not being social or outgoing. It's when someone is against society and does things, willingly or not, to hurt, harm, or not abide by the laws and rules placed by society. If someone doesn't like talking to his co-workers, he isn't antisocial, he's asocial. When people go around using that term for people that just don't like talking to people, or confuse the word antisocial with misanthropic, they're wrong. Euros, since this has gained traction, let me clarify, you may be incorrect in using the word based on its meaning, but by modern standards, people use it the not previously defined way, which is the definition for asocial. Personally, I don't care how you see it or your opinion on how words change or not change. Take a look at the thread's question, then back to my comment. My comment answers the question, and is also correct, if it's correct with an asterisk next to it. That being you adding on how it's slightly changed or not, doesn't make it any more or less correct. The Mr. Rogers Neighborhood song. Everyone says, it's a beautiful day in the neighborhood, but it is actually, in this neighborhood. How do we know it's not? It's a beautiful day in this neighborhood? I always pronounce the correct way, so don't know what to tell you. Fun fact though, I grew up in Pittsburgh and had classmates who legit lived in Mr. Rogers' neighborhood. He would always be away on Halloween and not give out candy, which sounds super mean and out of character until you learn the reason was he didn't want his neighbors burdened by kids coming from all over the city to trick or treat at Mr. Rogers' house. Christopher Columbus wasn't the first European to discover America. It was Leif Erikson, about 500 years before Columbus. Hinga-dinga-durgeon. Oh, is it Leif Erikson Day already? Being out in the cold does not make you sick. The flu shot cannot give you the flu. But being out in the cold can weaken your immune system due to stress. This weakened state can make you more susceptible to illnesses. Mount Everest ain't the tallest mountain on Earth. Mauna Kea is. It wasn't 3 wise men that visited Jesus. It was an unspecified number. The Dutch didn't start the slave trade. Asia and the Middle East had been using and selling slaves, both African and European, for centuries already. The Dutch just were the first to do it on a worldwide scale. Ancient Egypt had slaves. The Romans had slaves. The Greeks had slaves. Slavery is like prostitution. It's been around since humans have. It's not as simple as right brain versus left brain at all. No one uses only one side, unless you've lost half of your brain, which is possible to survive. It Pedantism. I think you'll find it's pedantry. It's forte. When used to refer to someone's strong suit, is pronounced fort. It's a French noun related to the strong part of a sword blade near the hilt. Forte, pronounced forte, is an Italian adjective meaning loud, strong. But most people are exposed to that one first, usually from music class, so the two-syllable pronunciation gets used for both words. But since it's one of those cases where the wrong word becomes the right one through popular use, it's basically moot. Edit. Corrected the Italian. Everything is chemical. Yep, you'd think I shouldn't have to explain this by now. But no, there's always one more hippie twat right around the corner. There really is a war inside of Ba Sing Se. It's utmost, not upmost. The phrase "the exception that proves the rule" does not mean that, somehow, a counterexample to the rule reinforces it. That's absurd. Instead, the proper usage is when you see an exception that implies a greater rule. A sign that says no parking on Thursdays is an exception that proves that the general rule is that you can park there every other day of the week. When people say "I could care less," they mean they actually could care less than they do. The proper way to say it is "I couldn't care less." Reno, Nevada is farther west than Los Angeles. It may seem obvious when looking at a map, but many people insist that since California is on the west coast, it has all the farthest west points. Just one word: irregardless. That copper is a better conductor of electricity than gold. The only reason gold is used is because it can handle high temps. Apparently I was wrong. Copper has about 30-40 F, 25 C, higher melting point than gold. Edit. I'm reminded gold doesn't rust or erode like copper or silver does. It's also better for soldering. Silver is a better conductor, but has lower melting point than both and costs more than copper. Whoa, you made it to the end? You're a ducking beast. I'll cut you a deal. Smash like and subscribe for more curated content, bruh. It's free and that's a great price.